Hello, welcome to the broadcast. I'm Billy Stewart, Assistant Pastor here at Solid Rock Tabernacle, 1325 Rudy Road in Alma, Arkansas. I just want to take a minute to extend this personal invitation to you to come and join us in one of our exciting spirit-filled services. Our Sunday school begins at 9 a.m. Our Sunday morning worship begins at 10 a.m. and our Sunday evening worship begins at 6 p.m. We also have an exciting Wednesday evening Bible study where we are going through the Bible book by book, chapter by chapter, verse by verse. I think that you'll really enjoy it. Come and join us, won't you? 1325 Rudy Road here in Alma, Arkansas. Hey, we'll save a seat for you. And now, let's join our service already in progress.
Just kind of boring and it doesn't really apply to anything right now. So I went and looked through all of that, and chapters 13 and 14 talked more about the lepers and the cleansing of the lepers and things like that. Chapter 15 was talking about the laws concerning bodily discharges. So I said we can probably skip that one too. Chapter 16 was more information about the Day of Atonement, which we've already gone into quite a bit. So we're not gonna go over that anymore. And then chapter 17 discussed the sanctity of the blood, which we already went over quite a bit of that. So now it takes us to chapter 18. And in chapter 18, we're starting to get into the laws about sexual immorality. So let's get into that. Verses 1 to 5. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, I am the Lord your God. After the doings of the land of Egypt, wherein ye dwelt, shall ye not do, and after the doings of the land of Canaan, whither I bring you, shall ye not do, neither shall ye walk in their ordinances. Ye shall do my judgments, and keep mine ordinances, to walk therein. I am the Lord your God. Ye shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, which if a man do, he shall live in them. I am the Lord. So this chapter is one of the most extensive and also one of the most direct passages in the Bible when it comes to regarding God's stated will and his commandments regarding the expression of human sexuality. These are the words of God, what we're going to see. And as such, they have immeasurably more authority than the words, the opinions, the theories, the desires, the feelings, the longings, the wishes of any other person or persons. In other words, this is what God says. Okay? And this is what God commands. And it doesn't matter what anybody else says about it. It doesn't matter what the other theories are out there, whatever doctrine they may come up with. This is what God says. This is what God expects. Okay? Now we know that as a whole, remember, as a whole, Christians really do not fall under the law. We fall under grace. Although there is, part of the law is still there, but the obedience to God's law is not the basis of our right standing before him. In other words, we don't have to, we're not obligated to follow the law in order to have our right standing as the Jews did. The Jews, their right standing depended strictly on the law. That's how they stood before God, was because of the law. We don't fall under the law, we fall under the grace. But that doesn't mean the law doesn't apply to us or some parts of the law. The principle of the law remains. Okay? And one important use of the law is to be something of a guardrail for humanity. That means you got to stay between the two rails, you know. You don't want to go over here. If you're driving down a bridge and you get over too far on one side, you hit that guardrail. It keeps you from going off the bridge. Okay? Yeah. Yeah. It's like I hate driving into, especially into Oklahoma's got a lot of them that they do that at night. It really gets to me. But they have those two concrete barriers on both sides of the, you know, and you don't feel like, and you're like, I don't have enough room, but there's 18-wheelers, and you're seeing an 18-wheeler in front of you, and they've got plenty of room on both sides, but you're still going, man, I just feel like I got like inches on each side of it there. Yeah, you feel constricted on it. But those are guardrails. They're there to make sure that you don't get off track and hit something that you're get into places that you're not supposed to be. Okay? So the law is kind of guardrails. It acts as guardrails for humanity. It shows us the heart and desire of God for humanity. All right? In general and for his people in particular. So this chapter stands in the midst of commands that were uniquely directed to Israel. These commands weren't directed towards the people in Canaan or in Egypt or anything else. They weren't directed to them because Israel was the only kingdom that specifically recognized Yahweh, Jehovah, as their king. Okay? They're the ones that had the covenant with God. So, because they had the covenant with God, this is directed towards them. Yet, it still expresses the mind and the heart of God for all of us regarding the expression of sexuality. So this is evident in many of the New Testament commandments that we see. There's a lot of, the people will say that, the Bible, the New Testament doesn't say anything about homosexuality or these things, but it does, And I had somebody one time says, well, Jesus never said anything in all of his preaching. He never said anything about being gay. And I'm like, okay. Well, he didn't say anything about being homosexual on that. I said, yeah, but do you think that everything that Jesus says, that what we see in the gospel is all that Jesus ever said? In 3 years of ministry, that's all he said were those things? No, that's not the way that it was. Number one. And number two, I say, well, Jesus didn't say anything about armed robbery either. So does that mean that armed robbery is okay? Because using your logic, Jesus didn't directly say, do not commit armed robbery. So if he didn't say it, then it must be okay, right? Yeah, but Jesus, but it's there's all kinds of different things out there that Jesus didn't. We don't see Jesus saying this is wrong. Don't do that. That's true. We don't know all the things that he said. Okay, and as a matter of fact, it's John. The book of John says that all the things you couldn't write down all the things. There couldn't be books that contained everything that Jesus did and said during his time there. He said if it did, there wouldn't be enough books in the world to contain it all. Eh? But there are many passages that are evident in the New Testament, and the New Testament commands to abstain from sexual immorality and uncleanliness. Okay? When the New Testament writers wrote of sexual immorality and uncleanliness, they did so from the context that understood the commands that we're going to find here in Leviticus 18. All right? And as one of the important passages that defined sexual immorality and impurity. Okay? Obedience to the commands of Leviticus 18 is not only an expression of love to God, it also recognizes his wisdom and submits to his will. It's also an expression of love for our neighbor, okay, whom we will not sin against by participating with them in a behavior that is against God's will, right? And ultimately destructive to a blessed, happy, and flourishing life. And although the laws of Leviticus set forth moral and ceremonial principles, the sexual prohibitions enumerated are still in effect today. And the New Testament echoes the teachings of Leviticus 18 all through the New Testament. It prohibits incest. It prohibits adultery. It prohibits homosexuality. Okay? But before God gave a single command in this area, he first established a foundation for the whole matter. He had to establish a foundation. He declared this principle: you belong to me, and you're not going to do as the world does. Okay? You're going to be set apart from the rest of the world. Well, you can't be set apart from the rest of the world if you do what the rest of the world is doing. Yeah. You know. Yeah, I don't care, you know. If your friends went and jumped off a bridge, would you do it too? And nowadays kids would go, yeah, probably. Yeah. It's a if the kids, if it was on TikTok, I would. You know, it's a. Yeah, you know, there's people that do stupid stuff because somebody on TikTok or somewhere tells them to do something. You know, that's they had that. What was that one that wasn't too long ago to where you jumped out of your car while your car was still rolling and you danced around, you know, and all this stuff like that. I saw more of them where people would jump out and start dancing and their car runs into something and, you know, tears their car up. You know, if you want to be stupid, that's fine, but don't be stupid that, you know. Yeah. When I was at the Grand Canyon, you know, that's a mile up, you know, that's high up there on the Grand Canyon. And, you know, we're standing there holding on to the rail because it's so far down. And there was some, only word to describe it is idiot. She was there across the rail, standing on a rock, moving towards the back with the selfie stick, taking a selfie, standing about that far from the edge of the Grand Canyon. I'm like, you idiot. Take one more step back and that's it. It's all over. And they get people that do that all the time. They get people. Several people die every year off the Grand Canyon because they're doing stupid stuff like that. You know? So basically what God is saying, you belong to me. Don't do as the world does. You know? You have to do something different. And in many ways, the modern Western world is moving further and further away from biblically grounded sexual morality. Okay? The Western world is moving so far away from it. Every person has some sense of right and wrong. we all should have some sense. All right? Huh? Western world, yeah, the us, okay, us and Europe and places like that, what they call the Western world, right? And I, it always confused me that the farther west you go, the closer you get to the far east. So you you go, if you're gonna go to Japan, you go west, but Japan's considered the east, in China, all right? And part of the Western world, Europe and stuff like that, you got to go east to get to the Western world. So it's backwards, but that's what it means is the Western world, the modern Western world, which is us, okay? All right? But everybody has some sense of right and wrong. Okay? We have some embedded sense of right and wrong. Right? Most people will tell you, whether they go to church or do anything else, most people will tell you killing somebody is wrong. All right? Or, huh? Yeah, morality. Most people have some sense of morality in some way. Not always, not great senses of morality a lot of times. But we do have a sense of what's right and wrong. But when it comes to sexual matters, in our culture, what often happens is that the strongest idea shaping the sense of right and wrong is, if it feels good, then it's right for me. Okay? If I enjoy it, then it's right for me. Okay? It's the same thing with drugs and alcohol and this other stuff. Well, if it feels good, it's okay, is their sense of thinking on that. But that's not the way that it is, right? This twisted sense of sexual right and wrong has done tremendous damage in our culture, just as it has throughout history. Okay? Now it's just, it's so because the sexual freedom is so great, then they've gone to the abortion thing, to where, oh well, abortion on demand and abortion's okay. I saw people were arguing about this, and they say that a baby is, that it's just a fetus, it's just, it's attached to the mother and it's a parasite on the mother. And they said, well, when is it no longer considered a parasite? And they said, well, after it's born, then it's no. But after it's born, number one, until you cut that umbilical cord, can you still kill the baby? Is it still considered a parasite, or it's just a clump of cells? And they go, well, yeah, because it's still attached to the mother. So from the time that and this is people's sense of morality about it, is because they've gotten so to the point to where there are no consequences to the things that they're doing. There's no consequences to the sexual immorality. If you have a kid, well, we'll just go get rid of the kid. We'll just get an abortion. It does sound terrible, but that's the sense that they have in it. Yeah. It's that's just what they're using that as, just saying that it's trying to dehumanize a baby on that. But they messed up not too long ago when they got it to where they were saying that unborn children from illegal immigrants are considered Americans or something like that, that they have rights. So now they're saying that unborn illegal alien children have rights. But, so if you're going to give them rights, you got to give everybody else rights. You got to give those that are here in the States. But anyway, we'll see how that all works out. But it's important that as Christians, we live according to God's sense of what is right and what is wrong, especially when it comes to sexual matters. Okay? And not according to the doings or of the surrounding culture, because that's where we get into problems, and that's what the problem with the world is now, is the surrounding culture says it's okay, so to them it's okay. Okay? So strangely, the doings of the culture around us wants us to trade God's purpose for sex, which is fulfillment and meaning, all right, for the culture's confusion regarding sex, which is empty of all meaning. Right? And stranger still, many professing Christians are willing to make this trade. Okay? They're willing to say, oh, it's okay. But the standard of right and wrong in sexual matters is given by God in this chapter and in the entire Bible. And it was not given to hurt, to deprive, to restrict any kind of life, joy, or happiness for humanity. They were given ultimately to build the best life for society and for individuals. Okay? In a day where more and more people seem to abandon God's clearly stated standard of right and wrong, not just regarding sexual matters, but regarding anything. Okay? And that includes some people who profess to be faithful Christians. But if we don't accept God's standard for right and wrong when it comes to sexual behavior, then what or whose standard do we accept? See, there has to be a standard somewhere. The question is, whose standard are you going to accept? Even people that have a messed up sense of, what's right and wrong still have a standard that they go by. But whose standard is it? How did you get that standard? Okay? All right. Let's look at verses 6 to 9. None of you shall approach to any that is near of kin to him to uncover their nakedness. I am the Lord. The nakedness of thy father or the nakedness of thy mother shalt thou not uncover. She is thy mother, thou shalt not uncover her nakedness. The nakedness of thy father's wife shalt thou not uncover. It is thy father's nakedness. The nakedness of thy sister, the daughter of thy father, or daughter of thy mother, whether she be born at home or born abroad, even their nakedness thou shalt not uncover. So, the first section of this chapter defining sexual sin prohibits sex among close relatives. Okay? Basically incest is what it's known as. Okay? And the specifically prohibited relationships will be defined in the following verses. But the very first command of this chapter shows that God's standard for right and wrong rises above what brings physical pleasure in the sexual act. So speaking from a purely physical perspective, that sexual act with someone near of kin is not any different than the pleasure received from sexual act with somebody else. Right? But God never intended that the pursuit of physical pleasure be the highest purpose and good of the sexual act. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you got them wind up more inbred than the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas. So, but God intended the act of sex to be more than just something for pleasure. The act of sex is um, was to repopulate or to populate the world, to have children. Okay, and it was to be an important part of what binds together a husband and a wife in a one flesh relationship. Okay. Now, it's said to uncover his nakedness here. And this phrase is used 17 times in this chapter. Basically, it's a polite way of speaking of sexual activity. Okay? The emphasis is not so much on the nudity, but the sexual activity itself. And in these verses, sexual activity between parents and children, parents and stepchildren, siblings by birth or by marriage is prohibited. That's it. It's against the law. It's not to be done. That's all there is to it. And apart from the husband and wife relationship, the family relationship should not and must not be sexualized. Okay? Sex among people in these relationships is condemned even if they're adults. Okay? It says even when they get old, even when they're adults, it's condemned. So in a sense, the nakedness of a husband and wife belongs to their spouse and no one else. All right? All right, Leviticus 10-18. The nakedness of thy son's daughter or thy daughter's daughter, or even their nakedness, thou shalt not uncover, for theirs is thine own nakedness. The nakedness of thy father's wife, daughter, begotten of the father, she is thy sister. Thou shalt not uncover her nakedness. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy father's sister. She is thy father's near kinswoman. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy mother's sister, for she is thy mother's near kinswoman. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy father's brother. Thou shalt not approach to his wife. She is thine aunt. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy daughter-in-law. She is thy son's wife. Thou shalt not uncover her nakedness. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy brother's wife. It is thy brother's nakedness. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of a woman and her daughter, neither shalt thou take her son's daughter or her daughter's daughter to uncover her nakedness, for they are her near kinswoman. It is wickedness. Neither shalt thou take a wife to her sister to vex her, to uncover her nakedness beside the other in her lifetime. Okay? So in these verses, God commands sexual relations, or condemns sexual relations between a lot of different family members. Okay? Just don't do it. Grandparents and grandchildren? No. Uncles, aunts, nieces, nephews? No. Parents and the spouses of their children? No. Siblings and the spouse of their other siblings? The children of a spouse? The sibling of a spouse? Okay? There is an important sense in which the nakedness of an individual belongs to their spouse and no one else. That's it. Okay? It goes against God's wisdom and it goes against God's law. Okay? To give that nakedness to anyone else or for anyone else to take it. All right? Now, verse 19. And thou shalt not approach unto a woman to uncover her nakedness as long as she is put apart for her uncleanliness. Okay? So this command is echo of Leviticus 15:19-24, where the breaking or where the penalty for breaking this observance of ceremonial cleanliness was described. Um, Basically, this was if the woman is menstruating, that's what this means on that, okay? So the penalty was to perform a ritual washing. Uh, there's no specific mention of a marriage relationship in this verse. A woman includes a wife, but goes beyond the marriage relationship. Okay? In marriage, there was a command for sexual restraint and honor even within a marriage relationship. Okay? A woman includes a wife, but it goes beyond the marriage relationship as well. All right? I don't know why I did that one twice, okay? Verse number 20. Moreover, thou shalt not lie carnally with thy neighbor's wife to defile thyself with her. Okay? So, to lie carnally. Another polite way to say sexual intercourse or activity. Okay? So they said, don't do it with your neighbor's wife. Okay? If you do it with, if you do with the neighbor's wife, you have violated the marriage bond. It's called adultery, yeah. Okay? Sexual acts outside of the marriage covenant or breaking the marriage covenant do not fulfill this intention. They go against God's design and ultimate benefit for humanity, both collectively and individually. Basically, adultery is not just a married woman or a married man having sex with somebody else. Okay? A man or a woman that is engaged in sexual activity not being married, not just to somebody else, but not being married at all, especially not to each other, is considered adultery. All right? And it's wrong. Outside of the marriage covenant. God intended that for the marriage covenant and the marriage covenant only. Nothing else, not outside of it. All right? Many people who are tempted to adultery don't consider how the sin will defile themselves. When they give in to something like that, they don't consider how it is it's going to defile them. It's going to defile their spouse. It's going to defile their marriage. It's going to defile whoever they're with theirs. Okay? The same way, even if you're not married, you have two people who aren't married, that aren't in a marriage relationship with each other or anyone else. To engage in promiscuous sexual activity outside of marriage leads to a lot of problems, okay? Diseases, everything else. It can cause a lot of problems. So, consider how that sin can defile themselves as well as others. All right? All right, verse number 21. And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Molech, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy God. I am the Lord. Now, okay, and let me explain what this means. Okay? The horrific worship of the pagan idol Molech basically began by heating a statue, a metal statue, that represented that god. And it was heated until it was red hot. Then a living infant was placed on the outstretched arms of that statue, while they beat on the drums, people were beating on drums all around to drown out the screams of the child until it was burned to death. Yeah. 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 It they had various reasons for doing that, but it's, that's what God is saying. Don't do that. Don't do something like that. Despite the strong and clear command, even a man as great as Solomon, y'all know who Solomon is, right? Okay? He at least sanctioned the worship of Molech. If he didn't do it, he did sanction it. And he built a temple to this idol. Okay? So it's obvious that God would condemn such an abomination. God's not going to, God's nowhere is he going to say that's okay. But this command here in this context of sexual sins, because often Molech worship was a method of infanticide, right? Infanticide is to eliminate children born outside of marriage. Okay? Mm-hmm. They killed them in that way. In that horrible, horrific, terrible way. Yeah. So when you Molech, basically Molech can be seen as an ancient version of birth control by infanticide. Even today, sometimes abortion is used as birth control after the conception of a child. Okay? So this still applies in that, God is saying don't do that, because what people are doing now is that child that is conceived, whether inside a marriage or outside of marriage, and they don't want it, they're using it as a form of birth control, abortion as a form of birth control. Abortion is nothing but infanticide. It's killing babies. That's what it is. Yeah. But they use it as that. They say, "Oh well, I got pregnant, so I'll just abort the baby." No. Well, they don't call it the baby. They say, "I'll abort the fetus," or "I'll abort the clump of cells," or whatever. They have dehumanized it to the point to basically, it's just like it was with the worship of Molech. You cannot, as a human being, look upon a baby and say, "Yeah, that's a human being, that's a human child," and then lay it on a red hot statue until it burned to death. That's yeah, and then and then beating drums loud enough to where you can't hear it crying. So it is, and like I said, that's what's happening now. God's saying don't worship Molech, but society today that has turned so much to abortion is basically doing just that. They are worshiping Molech. They are treating infanticide as a way of birth control, just like they did in the ancient times. Okay? All right, here's the big one. Thou shalt not lay with mankind as with womankind. It is an abomination. Okay? This is pretty clear. It's a pretty clear command against same-sex sexual acts. Okay? God's intention for sexual expression is within a marriage covenant. And even though they've legalized same-sex marriages, that's not the marriage covenant that God is talking about. A marriage covenant is between one man and one woman. That's it. That's the marriage covenant. Okay? Sexual acts between those of the same sex do not fulfill the intention of what God had and wanted the sexual acts to be. It's an abomination. Okay? This is one of the strongest words of condemnation in the vocabulary of biblical Hebrew. Abomination. That is one of the biggest, strongest words of condemnation. Okay? It's not, you'll see what it's wrong to do this, it's wrong to do this, and you shouldn't do. To say it's an abomination, that's God saying no. Okay? Specifically, what is condemned is the practice of male homosexuality. This is what this is referring to. However, when you get into Romans chapter 1, verses 24 to 32, that specifically speaks against lesbianism, okay, sex between two women. This prohibition is widely rejected and despised by a lot of people in the Western culture. In fact, a lot of people even consider it hateful. Okay? And to think that it's wrong that same-sex marriages, the homosexuality is wrong. And one reason is that it's considered hateful is because of a radical shift in thinking, especially regarding homosexuality over the last few generations. Okay? Because you look at it, for centuries before this, homosexuality was thought as something that people did or that they practiced. Okay? However, in the last few generations, Western culture is in general see homosexuality as defining one's identity. Now, okay? They don't. I was born that way. No, you weren't. Hey, you weren't born that way. If you're doing it, it's a choice that you're making. I'm sorry, but that's just all there is to it. But people now, they want to justify it by saying, well, that's the way God made me. No, it's not. God did not make you gay. Okay, what you think, anything else, God did not make you gay. God did not make a woman to come out into a man's body. It didn't happen. Okay? It just didn't happen, and anybody that's saying that is deluding themselves. And to me, quite frankly, it's as bad as it's getting into to be a mental illness is what it is. Okay? That these people will, and it's starting to happen around in the Fort Smith area now. It was not as prominent, but it did happen in like Fayetteville, because Fayetteville was a big college town, and it was a big area up there. But now it's getting to be that way even in Fort Smith, because Fort Smith's starting to become a big college town now with the University of Arkansas. Yes. Yeah, just completely wiped them out. But you get this liberal mindset nowadays, to where do what you want, be who you want to be, and if you want to call yourself a squirrel, call yourself a squirrel. That's fine. If you want to call yourself a squirrel, be a squirrel. But don't make me call you a squirrel. Okay? Don't drag me into your delusion on that. Yeah, and don't get in front of somebody going squirrel hunting. This, I did hear the story of the boy that came home from school, said he was a cat, and his dad said, "No, you're not." He goes, "Yes, I am. I'm a cat." And he goes, "All right, you're a cat." Started giving him cat food, made him go to the bathroom in a litter box, and at night put him outside. Said, but I want to. Nope, you're a cat. Cats go outside at night. That's just. Well, that kid didn't want to be a cat very long. After that first night of having to get shoved outside, decided, I don't want to be a cat after all. You know. But it is, the world, schools are doing this. They're pushing this on kids, young kids in elementary school. They're pushing this on them, and it's if we don't get a hold of it, I'm thankful that it's not as bad in Arkansas, but we're going to start seeing more and more. I think Arkansas is actually starting to go to a voucher system now, to where you can send your kids to a private Christian school, and the state will give the money to the Christian school instead of the public school. And people are having a big fit about that. Oh, you're taking money away from public schools. Well, if that's what they're teaching, they don't need to be funded. All right? So, you, yeah, don't acknowledge. I mean, don't. If you want to do that, that's fine on your own time. That's fine, but don't expect me to fall in line with your delusion. Okay. All right. Let's move on. Verse number 23. Neither shalt thou lie with any beast to defile thyself therewith, neither shall any woman stand before a beast to lie down thereto. It is confusion. Okay? This is clear, it's a command against sexual acts with animals. Okay? To practice this was to defile yourself and to make yourself unclean and to make yourself impure. Okay? And rightly so, it was regarded as a perversion and ungodly combining of what should not be brought together. Okay? Especially when it comes to sexual behavior. All right? Okay, verses 24 to 30. Defile not yourself in any of these things, for in all these the nation are defiled, which I cast out before you. And the land is defiled, therefore I do visit the iniquity thereof upon it, and the land itself vomiteth out her inhabitants. Ye shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, and shall not commit any of these abominations, neither any of your own nation, nor any stranger that sojourneth among you. For all these abominations have the men of the land done, which were before you, and the land is defiled. The land, that the land spew not you out also when ye defile it, as it spewed out the nations that were before you. For whosoever shall commit any of these abominations, even the souls that commit them shall be cut off from among the people. Therefore shall ye keep mine ordinances, that ye commit not any of these abominable customs which were committed before you, and that ye defile not yourselves therein. I am the Lord your God. Okay? Now, today, our modern culture, especially in the Western world, refuses to see any aspect of sexual conduct as defiling. Okay? The only measure that they have is immediate pleasure, not right or wrong. Okay? But sexual sin does defile us, and sexual sin does harm us. God's laws, all of God's law, are given for our best. Okay? They're given for us to have the best life that we possibly can, and they're not an attempt to merely test us or to boss us around. One of the reasons God brought Israel to defeat and displace the Canaanites was a judgment against their sexual perversion. Okay? We see that in a lot of different aspects too. Sodom and Gomorrah was the same way. It was destroyed primarily because of their sexual perversion. Okay? You see this all through the Bible, that it's God saying it's an abomination. I don't want you, you shouldn't do that. All right? And he's saying that those that do it, he's going to spew them or vomit them out of that country. Kick them out of that country. All right? That's what happened when Israel took over the Canaanites. It's because of their sexual perversion. And if Israel practiced the same sins to the same degree, then they could also expect to be cast out of the land as well. Okay? If nations celebrate and promote similar sins today, we should expect that the judgment of God is eventually going to come out. It's going to happen. It's going to happen in this country because we are condoning it. We're saying it's okay. Okay? And because of that, and it's not just the United States, but other countries as well. Europe, there's a lot of countries around that do this, and it is going to bring God's judgment upon us. Plain and simple. Because God's going to say enough is enough. And it's going to bring his judgment. And eventually that judgment is going to come out, and it's going to happen. God commanded that in Israel there should be a strong sense of social disapproval to the point of amounting to exile. Okay? That is towards anyone who broke these laws of sexual immorality. Kind of kicking them out, yes, is one thing. Okay? But more than that, before they even exiled them out of the country, it was a matter of social ostracization, to where they won't even talk to you. It's like you don't exist. Okay? You get that. It really happens pretty bad in social media now. But if somebody is against somebody at work or at school or something like that, they can start a social media campaign and turn everybody against them, to where those people just don't want to have anything to do with them. They won't worry about coming and asking questions. But that can happen, and that's basically what God's saying. No, ostracize. Say no. We're not going to have anything to do with you. Yeah. And they were talking about doing that in the U.S. too. Well, and it's we've gotten in this society, we've got now, back when I was growing up, the TV was the babysitter. You come home, you put the kids in front of the TV, and on Saturday morning or whatever, and that was the great babysitter. All right. Nowadays, it's the phone, the iPad, the whatever, the electronics. That's the great babysitter. You put them there and set them down, you'll know where they are all the time. Okay? And it's, it's not like it was back in, years ago. You send your kids out and kick them out in the morning and said, don't come back until the street lights come on, which was really rough on us because we didn't have street lights. So, but it got so bad. It got so bad that there for a while, some of you may remember this, but it got so bad that parents forgetting their children being out, because at the 10 o'clock news it say it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? Oh yeah, time to come home, y'all. Yeah, but a lot of us would stay out. It didn't matter. But that's basically what God is saying. He says, kick them out, exile them. Let's just get them out of the country. Get them out away from everybody else so where they can't corrupt anyone else. That's what we have to do. Yeah, everybody, now it's encouraged, but it's again, we're at the point to where the judgment of God is going to come. The judgment of God is going to fall. All right, we're going to end it right there. That ends chapter 18. We'll get into chapter 19 next week. All right. So, any questions, comments, concerns? Amens, omes.
Thank you for joining us today. We pray you were blessed by the broadcast. If you have a prayer request or questions about Solid Rock Tabernacle, please visit our website at www.solidrocktabernacle.org.